up? Tyson France with Motion Revolver here. Thank you so much for purchasing the Winter Games version 1 project. We'll dive right in to show you how this works. Hopefully you've started with the tutorials folder and worked through the tutorials to show you how these work. Just wanted to show you a quick overview of how the files are structured. So we'll navigate to the project files folder, and this is where we will find all of the After Effects projects that we need to customize the graphics. So the most important thing in this folder here is understanding the difference between the live and the rendered versions. Basically, these two projects are based on whether or not you have the Optical Flares plugin installed on your computer. So if you own Video Copilot Optical Flares, you'll want to work with the live version, because then you'll be able to have full editing capabilities over the Optical Flares plugins. If you don't have the Video Copilot Optical Flares plugin, you'll want to work with the rendered version of the file. This does not require any paid plugins outside of the Video Copilot Reflect plugin, which you'll need a link to. You'll need to install that as well, but that's a free plugin that you can download from the website. So again, you'll be able to edit certain features of the optical flares inside the rendered version, such as opacity and color, but you just won't have control over the position and the flicker and stuff. Basically, all of the optical flare instances are pre-rendered inside of the rendered version. So I hope that explained it clearly enough. But once you've decided which project file to work on, outside of that, there are two additional folders inside of here. One is the event results, and one is the metal tracker. We'll start here with the event results, and I'll show you a preview of what's inside. This is what the top 3 graphic looks like, and this is what the top 10 graphic looks like. So these two After Effects project files, they can be worked on independently of one another. So you can open these up and actually customize the graphics within, or you can leave these be and you can actually import them into whichever master file that you've decided to use. So either one of these. And I'll show you how to do that in a separate video. But I wanted to show you that inside of here, so you can create as many, you can basically duplicate these files as many times as you need for however many events you need. So for example, you know, there are 15 different sports, I believe, in the Winter Olympics. So there's a good chance that you're going to need a lot of instances of these graphics. So we can rename these, for example. We can call this the top 10 event results for bobsled. And this one can be the top 10 results for figure skating, and so on. So as you can see, we can duplicate this as many times as we need. So we can even duplicate this again and call it number 2 if we'd like. But that's just to show you that there really is no limit to how many graphics you can create with this template. Projects can be duplicated an infinite amount of times, and same thing applies for the metal tracker folder. So we'll preview those. That's what the 5 country metal tracker graphic looks like, and this is what the 10 country metal graphic, metal tracker graphic looks like. That's a mouthful. All right, so also same thing with the event results. You don't have to include 10 countries here. So say for example you only wanted to show like the top 8 or whatever, you can just turn these layers off and show however many countries or athletes you want to show here. Same thing applies to the metal tracker After Effects projects. These can be worked on independently, or they can be imported into the master files. You can duplicate these for as many as you need. Say for example, every day you wanted to have a new metal graphic. So I don't know, this year the Olympics start February 9th, but I don't know, we could call this day 1, and then we could duplicate it. We can call this day 2. So as you can see, as the Olympics progress, we can duplicate this for as many graphics as we need to show how teams or how countries are lining up against one another in the overall metal tracker. So I'll revert back to the original here. So I think that covers the overall file structure. So best thing to do is just watch through the remainder of the tutorial files to make sure that you fully understand how to customize all of these graphics and work through everything. And good luck with the project. Alright, so hopefully you've watched the overview tutorial that shows you the general file structure and shows you how these project files are structured and what's inside of these folders. If you haven't already watched the overview tutorial, I highly recommend taking just 5 minutes and watching that, just in case it might answer any questions that you may have that could come up while you're working on the project. So what I've done is I've opened up the live version inside of After Effects, and this is currently the latest version, which is CC 2018. And inside of the project window, we'll see that there are 3 folders here, labeled steps 1 through 3, so we can easily follow along. Step 1, import assets, is pretty self-explanatory. This is where we will import any assets that we need for the project, such as logos, audio, footage, images, anything like that. There's folders for pretty much everything, so we can place things where they need to be, and we can easily find them when we need them. So once you've imported everything that you think you might need, we'll move on to step 2, and that is where we will edit the appearance of the project on a global scale. So any changes that we make to the comps located within located within of this folder, those changes will be reflected throughout the entire project. So if we change colors or text or logos, those changes will be shown throughout the remaining graphics, which are found inside of step 3. This is the bulk of the package here. So we have intros and bumpers, backgrounds, lower thirds, transitions, event title screens, and then again, hopefully you watched that overview tutorial, because this is what I meant when I said you can import the event result projects and the metal tracker projects into the project. Now we'll get to that a little later, but that's why the words import are on these folders, because if we twirl these open, they're actually currently empty. There's nothing inside. And there's a reason for that. I'll explain that later as well. But we'll close that so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. And we'll start here, the first comp inside of the edit appearance. Now, this is currently the Envato icon, which you'll probably want to delete, because I can't imagine why you would want to leave that in there. Now, this could either be left blank, so you can either turn it off or just delete the file altogether. This could be a company icon or logo or network if you have one, or you can place live text in here, pretty much anything you want, because what's going to happen is if I skip ahead here and open up the main emblem composition, this is where that network icon comes into play. It displays right above the Olympic year inside of the main emblem. So if I actually turn this off, you'll see that this goes away. It's completely blank, but I could put anything in here. I could put text, not test, text. I can't type today. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so I just placed just a generic word text here just to kind of show you what would happen. And now we have that there. Obviously, it's a little on the small side, but yeah, we can bump that up and play with the appearance. But that's just to show you what would happen. So what we'll do is we'll move on to comp number 2, which is the main emblem text. And if I open up that main emblem again, this shows you what the main text will look like. So we have the year 2018, the location PyeongChang, and the title Winter Games. So we can change all of that here. So say, for example, you purchased this project and you want to use it again in, let's see, it would be 2022. Obviously, that's a little wide, so we can actually either expand the comp maybe just a tad to accommodate, or we can cut the kerning down a little bit and bring that closer. Either way, just so that the number is not cut off. Where is 2022? forget where the 2022 Olympics are. Is it Japan? I completely forget. I'm not going to look it up, but we'll just call it New Olympic. New Olympics. Okay, Winter Games. And we'll leave that go as well. So we can change this pretty much to anything we want, even Winter Games. Put that down there so that if the year is getting in the word of in the way of you clicking on these lower layers, you can just drag the year layer to the bottom, and you'll should be able to easily or more easily highlight them. But anyway, all of these are all customizable text layers. There's a gradient ramp on here, which this color is actually controlled through the global elements, the global appearance, which I'll show you right now. This is the main customization comp, where pretty much you can control the overall global look of the entire project out of this main comp here. So on the right, there's a swatch panel that shows you all of the features, and you want to make sure that you can either do this in the timeline, which I don't really recommend, but if you have your effects control window open, and if you don't, you just go to window and make sure that the little checkbox here is activated next to effects controls. When I click on items inside of the composition, the editable attributes change, so I can easily update things. So the main color, as you can see, is blue. If I change the map black to, let's say we wanted to make this like a red color, make it a little darker. You'll see that just changed the overall look for pretty much all of the graphics. Now, the lens flare is still a little bit blue, and the emblem itself is actually blue, and we'll go back to that and we'll actually edit that. But if I click on the lens flare tint, that's controlled through a hue and saturation attribute. So what I need to do here is go to the master hue, and I can click and drag this little wheel, or I can click and drag on the degree number here. I like to click and drag on a little wheel, just to kind of see what sort of results we get. So if we change it to more of a reddish, we can kind of keep the theme of the overall look, or we can just reset it and go back to the original blue. And I'll revert back to the original, revert back to the original blue main color as well. All right. And then we also have supplemental color A and color B. So all of the supplemental graphics, like the lower thirds, and so the lower third title and the lower third subtitle, these panels here will change. So if I click matte black 2, I can change that. Say we wanted that to be red, we can change that to red. Or if we wanted the sub panel to be I don't know, if we want to, let's say for example we wanted the sub panel to be black, we could change that to black, but then of course we lose the text. What we then have to do is go into the lower third graphic, open that up, and then we can actually change. We can click on that sub panel text and we can change that to white, and then we'll easily be able to see that again. So that's how we would do that. But I'll revert back to our original state, black and white. All right, so that pretty much covers the global customization interface. There's only 4 main features in here to change. And then if we go back, we'll navigate back to our main emblem. Now, remember when we changed the blue color on our main color panel, that changed everything except for the main emblem. So we can customize all of the features in our main emblem pretty much through the exact same sort of interface, like this. So our emblem our emblem background is currently this blue gradient. If we wanted to change that to, say, more of a red, we could do that. And again, remember, our text is actually controlled through the global appearance. So if I changed this to red, it would update it as well. Now we can go back here and we can actually deactivate the script that controls the color if we wanted this text to be a completely different color. So if I hit in the timeline, if I highlight the year and hit the E key to show the gradient ramp, we can deactivate this little equal icon, and then we can customize the color there as well. If I go to the main emblem comp, now we can see it's red. So that's another way to do it. Actually going to revert this back to 2018 before I forget. Let's see if I remember how to spell PyeongChang. I think that's correct. All right. So we've reverted everything back to the original state. I think we have to go back in here and change this to our blue colors. Let's see, I think that was something a little bit more along the lines of that. All right. And then same process here. There's other features where we can change the emblem outer edge, the color of that. So if we wanted it to have a different color, we can change that. The inner edge, if we wanted that to, we can make that white. That's kind of a cool look. You know, you could do something like that. There's the mountain color, which is obviously the mountain graphic. We can change that. And then the edge highlight, which is very subtle, but sometimes makes a huge difference. You can see it sort of changes the hue of the edge. So if you have a different light source, you might want to, you know, match that so that it all kind of looks like it's in the same environment. But that's pretty much the main emblem customization as well, which actually more or less completes step 2 folder, which is all of the customization, which we've already accomplished. So we'll go ahead and we will move on to step number 3, which is where we build all of our graphics. Now these are also listed 1 through 7. These are all the different kinds of graphics that we have. So if we twirl open number 1, the intro and bumper, we see we have a few more folders in here: soundtrack, bumpers, and intro. So if we want to use our soundtrack file, we would just import it into this comp. It's currently 30 seconds long, which is how long our longest intro is. So you would import the whatever soundtrack or music file you want to use into that comp, which automatically is inserted into the bumpers and intro animations. So twirl those open. And you can see we have a bumper in, bumper out, the intro animation 6 second, and intro animation 30 second. So if we we'll start here with the intro. We'll open up the 6 second version. Now the 6 second version is actually 30 seconds long because what I've done here is I've allowed for the intro soundtrack to kind of bed out to 30 seconds. So if you're creating an intro for your project and you want a 6 second intro that then animates out, you can then go to your B-roll video with the soundtrack still playing over top. So just kind of show how this works. Begins to animate out. We have our transition, which comes in right here. The snowflake transition, which wipes away the graphics. Might be able to see it a little bit better if I make the background black. So the black portions would be video or images or whatever you might want to import. Just kind of show you how this works. Let's see. Don't think I have anything imported, but what you would do is just create a new composition with the intro. We'll just drag that to create a new comp. We'll just name this intro, and then we have our animation here, and then we could place you know what, I may actually just import just so you can see what this looks like. Footage, FPO, Let's say we just go with something like this. We'll drag our footage under here. So actually, I'm gonna have to blow that up. All right, so right here where the transition begins, I'll just go ahead and quickly render that. So this would be the end of the 6-second intro where the logo begins to animate out, and you can see how the transition wipes away the graphic into your B-roll video underneath. So that's how you would quickly create an intro to your show. All right, so we'll close those, delete that composition that we created, and then the intro animation 60-second version. It's the same thing with the same intro, but what happens is it then pads out to 30 seconds, so these graphics remain on the screen without transitioning away. So the soundtrack continues playing if you want a longer, intro, and then you can use one of the transitions to actually wipe it away wherever you need. So the bumpers are essentially the same thing. They're just a lot shorter. They're used to go in and out of commercials. The bumper in, basically you would use to come back from a commercial. This animation would pad out and then transition away to the beginning of the next segment. And then the bumper out you would use to go to a commercial. So it transitions from your show to the graphic and then plays for 10 seconds, so then you can fade away to a commercial. So that's how you use the bumpers. Moving on to the backgrounds, pretty self-explanatory. Actually, I'm going to delete that footage before I forget. All right. Background's pretty self-explanatory. There are 4. Background blank is really just a very simple background without a lens flare or anything. It's just an animated, kind of an animated snowy background, just to use for, placing text or images or video over. Same thing with the rest of these. It's just that they're a little bit more complex with an animated 3D snowflake and a lens flare graphic. Same thing with number 2, just a different style, and number 3, same thing again. More complex, just a different style, snowflake and lens flare. All right, so that's the backgrounds. Moving on to the lower thirds. Now this is where a lot of the customization comes into play. Now, the way the lower third is set up is normally I would build separate lower third comps and then let you choose whichever one you want. What I've done here is I've created I've basically condensed all of the customization features into one composition. So all you need to do is duplicate these comps for however many lower thirds you need. So say you need 10 lower thirds, you could duplicate this an infinite amount of times. You can have as many lower third comps as you want, just by highlighting the comp and then hitting the Command D key to duplicate, or you can go up to File, I think it's File, or is it Edit Duplicate? Edit Duplicate. You can duplicate the comp that way as well. But we'll open this up, and we'll find a few layers here in the timeline. All of these green layers are the editable text. Then we have an options layer, and we probably want to begin with the options layer in the timeline and make sure that your effects control window is open so you can see all of the features. So currently we have the double line option checked for a double line lower third. If we only wanted a single line lower third, we would activate that checkbox and deactivate the double line. So now we have a single line, and we could actually move that down by changing the position of the anchor point. I'll actually save that so that you don't have to worry about that. So now we have our single line activated. Title panel is currently activated, which is this black bar. If we don't want the title panel, we simply deactivate it and it goes away. Same thing with the sub panel, which is this white box down here with the black text. If we deactivate subpanel, that goes away. Also, same thing with the ID flag panel. We can get rid of it, and it's not there any longer. Otherwise, if we want it, but we would rather have our network logo or our show emblem, we can do that as well. We can have our network logo or the show emblem. And then if we want either one of those, or we don't want our flags, all we have to do is get rid of our flag control, which we'll actually come back to that in a second. But I'm going to deactivate that show emblem just so that I can finish the features here. We also have the color panel for the flags. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and deactivate the United States flag just so you can see. We can now have the network logo without a flag behind it, and we can change the color of the panel behind this if we wish. All right, revert to the original. We can have our show logo with the panel behind it. We can even deactivate the logo panel, and now we have kind of a floating thing off to the side there. Not sure I like that, but it's an option. And then last but not least in this editable layer of this editable options layer, there's the lower third width. So if I use this slider to increase the number, you'll see that the lower third gets longer. If I decrease the number, it gets shorter. So I can control the width of my lower third simply by making this number larger or smaller. It doesn't affect the animation. The animation still occurs no matter what the width is or what features I've enabled or disabled in the options layer. And then we also have a transition out that occurs here at 15 seconds. Now, why did that happen? I gotta check. I'll delete that. Okay. We have a transition that occurs right here at 15 seconds, and that is denoted by this purple layer. So as you can see, it kind of flashes off the screen. Now, if I only want my lower third to be on the screen for 10 seconds, all I do is click and drag this transition comp, or layer, I should say, and now the transition occurs at 10 seconds. So no matter where you position this purple layer, that is where the transition is going to begin. So I'll revert that back to 15 seconds. Actually, I'm going to go back up here and revert that back to 2 lines. And I might just activate the network logo for the default. Okay. Now, let's say this lower third was denoting, you know, an athlete name. So what I'll do is I'll customize this. Actually, I need to either turn this off, because right now we are using the double layer or the double line text, and when I try to customize this, it's actually clicking on that layer. So I'm just going to turn that single line off, and to highlight that, I'll just change this to athlete name, and then I'll change this to, I don't know, United States luge, something like that. I can change this to luge gold medal event, or something like that. And then down here, I can maybe change this to something like 2014 World Luge Champion. Even though I don't think the United States ever wins the luge, but hey, it's nice to dream. So, as I was saying, let's say this is an athlete lower third, and we want to display the country of this athlete within this little panel here. Well, if I go up to options, I'm going to deactivate the network logo because we won't want that. But I'll need to go to flag control. And inside flag control, there are hundreds of flag options, hundreds of country options, I should say. They're all alphabetical order. So depending on which, well, other than the United States being at the top here, and the reason why the United States is at the top is because I expect this template to be purchased mostly by Americans. So just to make it easily accessible at the top, that is where the United States have been placed. So let's say this athlete is from the US. We twirl that open and activate the checkbox, and that displays the American flag within that panel. Now, if this athlete was, say, from the United K, or the UK, the United Kingdom, we can activate that, and that flag is active within there as well. Now, if we don't like the position or the orientation of this flag, or we want to make it larger or smaller, what we do is highlight this flag control, and we can click and drag in the comp window and move it around, or we can click on the flag layer in the timeline and hit the S key to show the scale, and we can scale it down, or we can scale it up. We can make it bigger, smaller. I think the default was 275. We can even change the rotation, which is currently set to -10. If we don't want it to be angled like that, we can just set it to 0, and it sets it to a straight orientation. But we'll revert that back to the original. All right, now I've deactivated the flag, and I think that's pretty much it. That's how we customize everything within this composition. I'm gonna try to revert all of the text back. Just keep going here until we get to our original state. All right. Turn that back on. All right, I think that's where we're gonna leave it. All right, so that's the process of customizing the lower third. Now, as I was explaining, you can duplicate this lower third comp for as many times as you need. So if you have 20 athletes that you need to create lower thirds for, all you do is duplicate the lower third comp, and you can easily customize all of that within the same composition. All right. And moving on to folder number 4, the transitions. There are 3. Not much to really change here. Transition 1 is a simple arrow type graphic. This one's 2 seconds long. Transition 2 is a snowflake theme graphic, which wipes on and off the screen. This one is also 2 seconds long. And transition 3, which is 1.5 seconds, 1 second 15 frames. This one's more of an emblem theme graphic where the emblem then zooms at you, and you would then use that as the transition to your next clip. Now keep in mind, these graphics, such as, well, really any of these graphics can be pre-rendered and then imported into any editing software, or the project could be imported into Premiere and used that way as well. Moving on to this, folder number 5, the event title screens. There are 2 folders inside of there, backgrounds and interstitials. The backgrounds are 15 seconds long, and the interstitials are 4. The interstitials are basically transitions with the event title applied. So if I open up this one here, Alpine Skiing, we can see it animates on, plays for about, I think it's 2.5 seconds, and then animates off. So a lot of times with Olympics coverage, you'll see this used as a title card to kind of show highlights or an upcoming event, something of the sort, and then you edit your video underneath. And then there is an instance for all 15 winter sports events here. So alpine skiing, biathlon, bobsled, you can read them all here. If you needed more or a custom one, you could easily just duplicate one. I would recommend, if your title or if the words that you're using, if there's more than one word, you should duplicate that comp. If you have one that's just one word, such as curling, duplicate one with just one word. So say, for example, we'll duplicate curling and we'll just name it custom. Whoops. Open up custom, And then we could double click here and then just change the text to custom. And as you can see, the little ghosted text behind it changes as well. And then we have a completely custom title. Same thing with the backgrounds. Really, it's really just the interstitial kind of padded out to 15 seconds so it stays on the screen if you need it. If you don't want the show emblem, we could just turn that off. Then we have a cleaner look with just the snowflake without the show emblem. All right. Now that's where we'll stop for here. I'll actually create a separate tutorial file to show you how to work with importing the event results and metal tracker files. So working with and customizing the event results and metal tracker graphics is relatively straightforward. They're essentially constructed the same way, they're just different graphics. So there's a couple ways of working with these files. If you've already watched the overview tutorial, you'll know that you can either duplicate these files inside the folder, you can work with them independently and customize them as independent projects, or you can import them as AEP files into the main project. Now I still have the main project file open here, and if I want to import one of the event results projects, all I need to do is highlight that folder and then hit Command I or go to File Import, and let's see, we'll navigate to where we need to be. Where am I? Event results. Okay, so let's say I'll show you how to work with the top 10 files, simply because it would be sort of redundant to show you both of these since they function in the exact same way. But if we wanted to create an event result graphic with the top 10 file, all I have to do is click import, and it'll just take a second to import everything because there's a lot of expressions involved here. So we'll just give that a minute to import. All right, there we go. So what it's done is it's imported the entire AEP into this folder. So we could really just rename this folder and name it like event results bobsled, something like that. All right, and twirl that open. And then we sort of had the same structure here as any other project. So if you've worked with motion revolver projects in the past, you're probably familiar with this sort of file structure. The edit appearance is sort of the same way that the edit appearance comp works inside of the main project. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up the main graphic so that we can see what we're working with here. All right, there we go. So I'll set the out point at 3 seconds, and may actually just pre-render this so you can sort of see what the animation looks like. All right, there we go. So this is the build of the event title, or the event results. And each one of these text layers is fully editable. We also have an options layer. We have an options layer where the only option on this layer right now is the ability to turn on or off the footer panel. So if we wanted this additional panel here at the end, we just leave that activated. If not, we turn it off and it goes away. So now we no longer have a footer panel at the bottom of the graphic, but we'll leave that on for now. All right. If we want to edit the title panel text, we just highlight that layer and edit the text. Same thing with the sub panel and of course the footer panel that I just showed you. Now, to begin editing the athlete names, the easiest way to do that is either double click on the layer in the comp window or go down to the timeline. We can even go into the setup folder and open up the composition individually here. So starting with position panel 1, this is what one of these panels looks like. Now, all 10 of these are the exact same. The top 3 can be set in metal mode, which I will explain in a second. But within here, we can customize a few features, such as the position number, which you probably don't want to change because it's already set for you. You can change the country abbreviation. So if it's the United States, you can change this to USA, or if it's the United Kingdom, you can change it to UK or Scotland. However you want to set up the abbreviation, you can change that there. Same thing with change the name, whatever time. You can change this to either a score or a time depending on the event. And then let's say this athlete is from the USA, so we'll change that. And then we need to obviously change the flag. Now, if you've already watched the tutorial on how to customize the lower third, you'll see that this looks very familiar. All we do is highlight the flag control, and if we have our effect controls window open, if you don't have this panel open, go to your window and make sure that effect controls is open or checked. And then we can navigate through all of the countries that we have available within the project. I believe there's, I think it's close to 200. I forget how many countries there are. But right now we have the world graphic enabled, which we want to turn off because this athlete is from the United States. So we activate the US flag, and now if we go back to our event panel, now we can see we have an updated name with updated country and updated flag. Another thing we could do with this flag control layer is we can affect the position, the scale, and the rotation of the flag appearance. Right now, it's sitting at a negative 8-degree angle. If we wanted it to sit more straight, I actually have to fix that because it's changing the angle of the flag panel as well. So I will correct that. You can also adjust the scale and the position of the flag as well if you don't like the orientation of how the flag is sitting. So we will just revert this back to the original. All right, it's reverted back. Okay. Now, I won't spend too much time diving into these other layers simply because they all function the exact same way. All of these comps are set up in the exact same method, but you'll notice that comps 1, 2, and 3 currently have different color position panels. That is because if we go to our global appearance comp, actually, if we go to our, it's the position panel comp. So if we go to edit appearance and then open up the position panel, we'll see that there's an options layer there. And we currently have what is called the metal event mode enabled. The metal event is basically the event where the medals are handed out. So whoever comes in first, second, or third place, obviously those are the athletes who are going to win medals. If it's just a qualifying event like a heat or something where medals are not handed out, you can deactivate this metal event mode. And if we go back to our main panel, you'll see that those medals are now deactivated. So this is just showing you the position of all these athletes without actually denoting if they came in first, second, or third place. Now again, if I go back and I reactivate metal event mode, you'll see that first, second, and third are now gold, silver, and bronze. So pretty easy. Other customization features within the position panel are the ID flag panel. You can change the color of the tint behind the flag, and the country abbreviation panel. If we wanted to change the color of that to something else, we can do that as well. Now, if we open up the global appearance composition, global color, we could pretty much control everything within this interface, these little swatches here. If we wanted the background color to be something different, we could change that to, say, red, if that's what we want. We could also change the color of the header panel. Let's say we wanted that to be a different color. That changes the color of that panel. And then the supplemental color changes the color of the sub panel. So if we wanted something different there as well. There we go. So we'll revert back to the original. If you want to change the color of the text, you actually have to do that in the main comp. So if we wanted this header title to be, let's say, like gold, we would have to change that on the actual text layer itself. All right, but we'll revert that back to the original. All right, so I think that pretty much covers the event results. Now, if we want to work on the metal tracker, same situation. We'll just import the metal tracker project, top 10. Give that a minute to import. Again, there are a lot of expressions at work here. All right, so same thing, same amount of folders, same structure. We have our global appearance that we can play with. If we open up the build graphics folder, we have a total of 10 countries that we can display. We'll open up the main comp here for the metal tracker. All right, so we can see our main graphic here. There's 10 countries. Again, if we didn't want to display 10 countries, we can, just remove layers kind of like this, and it'll remove them from the graphic. But it animates on the screen the same way as the event results does. And then customizing it is the same way. We can open up position panel 1, and we can change the country, we can change the flag. So for example, if we wanted to show the United States, and then we would just update the metal count to whatever we need. Go back to our main graphic, and we can see all the changes we just made. There we go. And then we can customize each one of these layers to be whatever we need them to be. But I will revert these all back to the original. And that's pretty much that. Now, just to sort of reiterate, actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete these because these should not be in the project. So I can resave this. Just to reiterate, I'm going to close this project, and I'm going to open up one of these individually, just so you can show, so that I can show that these can be worked on as separate projects. Now, if you decide to work on these as individual projects, I very highly recommend you duplicate it first and work on a copy. So I'm going to duplicate. Whoops, what did I just do? All right, let's navigate back to where I was. All right, so I duplicated the event results top 3. We'll just call this, we'll call it speed skating. So this would be the top 3 event, or the results for the top 3 athletes in the speed skating competition. And now this is just its own graphic. There's no backgrounds, there's no additional graphics in here. It'll actually load a little bit faster because it's not really competing with the other compositions that are in the project. And then you can basically customize it pretty simply within this template, and then you could save it, and then you have your speed skating. Actually, let's just call this. I'm going to customize this real quick, just so that I can sort of show you how this works. Just going to go ahead and let's see, update a few of these. And then what I'm actually going to do is I am going to then import this customized, let's see, South Korea. It was Korea South, I believe, is the way it was. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I have to fix the positioning situation with that. Okay, so as you can see, we have a customized graphic here. Oh, actually, I probably should have I'm not going to change the athlete name. No point. I think you get the idea. I just want to kind of show a relatively customized graphic from beginning to end, and then import it into the main. All right, so now I've customized our top 3 graphic for the speed skating. I'm going to save that, close it, and then I'm going to reopen our main project. And then I'm going to import this just like we did with the other graphics. So now we have an event result top 3 for speed skating. If I import that AEP file, and open that up, that comp that we just edited. All right, now you can see the updated or the customized graphic that we just created is now imported into our main After Effects project. Now, keep in mind that this composition is not currently linked to the project we created. So what I mean by that is if I open up this project by itself and edit it, those changes will not be reflected in the new comp. These are not linked projects. This is just an imported asset that now needs to be customized within the main template. So just to possibly explain that better, now that you've imported this AEP into the main project, the only way to make updates to this comp is to do it within the main project. You can no longer make edits in a composition that you imported into the project. You can still work on this project and then delete this one and then import it again, but just so that you understand that this is not a linked comp, this is an imported asset. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't confuse you further, but that's how that works. So I think that pretty much covers all of the assets here. I don't think I missed anything. Let's see, we talked about event results in Metal Tracker and main comps, main projects. Yeah, I think that pretty much does it. There will be a couple other tutorials in the folder showing you how to downconvert 4K to HD. But beyond that, I think we covered it all. So again, I want to thank you very much for purchasing the Winter Games project. I hope you find it fun and easy to use, and best of luck with your project. Hey, what's up? Tyson France with a Motion Revolver quick tip here. Just wanted to cover an issue that comes up somewhat often in some of the After Effects projects that contain 4K compositions. There are instances, obviously, where you're not going to require the 4K resolution, And sometimes as an After Effects author, creating a completely different version with standard HD resolution compositions is a fairly large undertaking. So typically what I do as an author is sometimes I will leave the project set up for 4K rendering and not actually create separate HD compositions to render directly from. So this can sometimes create confusion as to how to render a standard HD resolution clip if you aren't already familiar with how the render queue can work. So what I have in the project window here is a 4K composition. As you can see here, it's I'll bring up the composition settings. It's 3840 by 2160 pixels large, and that is standard 4K 16 by 9 resolution. So if we have this 4K composition, but we want to render it in a standard HD 1920 by 1080 resolution, industry standard 1080p resolution, what we can do is we can take our 4K composition and drop it into our render queue. And then where it says output module, we just click on the blue text here, whatever preset is set here. It doesn't really matter. We just click on this text, which brings up the output module settings. And what we want to do is resize this composition to be standard HD size. So we'll click the little resize button here, and we can click and drag this or click and enter something to be whatever resolution we want. Or we can click on this little custom setting here, which has a bunch of presets, which is kind of handy, and typically you're going to want to use one of these in here. So usually what you need is already set up as a preset. So if we want standard 1080, obviously you can see there's also 720 and a bunch of other standard settings here, but we'll select HDTV 1080 29.97, which would be the NTSC standard. Leave the resize quality to high. And as you can see now, it's going to automatically resize while it's rendering. It's going to resize this 4K 3840 by 2160 comp down to 1920 by 1080. And we've locked the aspect ratio here, so it's going to retain that 16:9 aspect ratio. And we can click OK, and this is going to render this composition with those settings that we just created. But clearly, if we have a bunch of 4K compositions that we want to render at 1080, we don't want to have to continue, setting this or changing the settings for each instance that's queued up to render. So what we can do is actually create a custom preset from this. So what we'll do, we'll actually revert back here. We'll just revert back to what we had here, which is the lossless setting. We'll click on this again, and then we'll make our settings again. HDTV 1080. Okay, that's all great. Everything looks good. We'll click OK. Now what we can do is click on this little arrow here, and we can click Make Template. And what this is going to do is bring up the Output Module Templates dialog box, which will allow us to save these settings that we just set. Resize is set to 1920 by 1080, high quality. Final size will be 1920 by 1080, obviously. So what we can do is, where it says Untitled 1 here, we can rename this to whatever you want it to be, but something like 4K to 1080p. So we click OK, and now this output module is saved in our presets. So we have this set to 4K to 1080p. If we have another composition in our project window that we want to render with these same settings, all we have to do is change it to 4K to 1080p. Now, if while we're changing this, I'll revert back to lossless. If while we're changing this, we hold down the command, or I believe on a PC, I believe command is control. I'm not sure of the PC setting, but on a Mac, if you hold down command and click the new setting, that After Effects will save that setting as the default. So now, if we have a third composition that we drop in, it automatically has that set. So let's say, for example, we have 10 compositions that we need to down convert from 4K to 1080. If we grab all of these compositions and drag them into the render queue, as you can see, they all have retained that preset because we held down control while we were selecting the new preset that we created. So as you can see, this sort of automates the process very well. This also works with any resolution. Say, for example, you're working with a 3K resolution composition or a 2K resolution comp that you need to downsize. You can change the settings to fit whatever needs that you require. But that's pretty much it. That's how you down convert resolutions to smaller resolutions. I hope you found it useful. If you have any comments or questions or concerns, feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. But thanks a lot for watching. Alright, so you've purchased a project that is built in 4K, but you don't want to render it in 4K resolution. You'd like to downsize it to possibly HD, 1080p, something like that. And you don't want to go through and change the attributes for every single project. Well, you can do that in After Effects in the render queue, or you can use Adobe Media Encoder, which is what I kind of like to do. So I have a project open here that is built in 4K. As you can see, the compositions are 3840 by 2160 4K resolution. So I'm just going to grab a few of these comps and drag them into the timeline. Or not the timeline. I'm going to drag them into the render queue. And if you have an Adobe Cloud subscription, or if you have Adobe Media Encoder installed on your computer, if you have all of these comps checked in your render queue, you can click the Q and AME button. And what that will do is it will transfer any checked composition that you have in your render queue over to Adobe Media Encoder. It opens up the window and it already has them queued. Now, chances are it probably changed your render settings from After Effects. Right now, I did have it set to be rendered as QuickTimes in Apple ProRes 422 codec, but that's changed it over to H.264 in Adobe Media Encoder. But no worries, that's very easily fixable. So let's say, for example, we wanted to keep that as a QuickTime. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of the layers and make sure all the layers are highlighted so that you change the attributes for all of them. And first thing we'll change here is the H.264. You'll get a dialog that says you're going to be changing this setting for all instances in the render queue. Just click OK. This will take a second to boot up the export settings. And this is where we can change everything. So we want to change H.264 to QuickTime. And we want to change the video codec to, let's say, standard professional format, such as Apple ProRes 422. And then you see it's changed it to 720 by 480. Well, we don't want that. We can click Match Source so that it retains the 4K, or we can uncheck this match property, and then we can leave this little link checked and then change this to 1920, which will automatically change it to 1920 by 1080. So now what we've done, we can also set some other things like render at maximum depth and use maximum render quality, things like that if that's what we want to do. Change it to 16-bit as well if we want a little bit more detail. We click OK, and it has updated all of those settings that we just set it to. We can also change the render location to wherever we want all of these files to be rendered to. So that's as simple as it gets. You can take 4K compositions from inside of After Effects, queue them up in Adobe Media Encoder, and highlight all of the instances, and then change all of the attributes all at once. Very simple to down convert 4K to HD or any other format that you would like to render at. That's pretty much it. Happy rendering.
subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.